the relationship between happiness and religiosity is so established that many research papers take it as a given starting point.
I just hope I never get to the point where I'm taking a camera and I'm just filming myself like...
I could see myself being 10x happier after leaving like Calvinism.
Members of the church are doing really well.
It's easy for me to think, oh, everyone had the same experience I had, and everyone's totally happy with the church.
I gotta say, I've never seen a group who is more committed to blasting to the world how happy they are than people who have just left the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and had a martini for the first time.
All of the scriptural references used in this episode will be brought to you by scripturenotes.com. For a free trial to Scripture Notes, please visit the link in the description. All right, well, dude, Stephen Craney, you're here. You're in the studio. We're live. Tell us how religious people are actually statistically. Wow, that was great.
Nice.
Are statistically
Radio host
happier.
Professional radio host.
Yes, exactly. Why don't you tell us how statistically religious people are happier as a statistician yourself? My man, go.
So there's a huge literature on this, a lot of different studies, and they almost all point in the same direction. So they cover a lot of different dimensions of what they call subjective well-being. So that includes there's happiness, and then there's like life satisfaction, which is a slightly different thing than happiness. So there's a lot of different constructs that go into just your well-being. And you have different studies that have tapped into different different dimensions of subjective well-being, and they all there are some that point in the other direction, but for the most part they all kind of point in the same direction of religious people do just tend to be happier.
But so the self-reported happiness stuff, well, we've got real data with an N of 3, Brad, three times more than 1, from Twitter users who disagree with you. And in the Discord, we have their real life lived experience, Mr. Craney, okay? And they're saying there are 2 Twitter users and somebody from ex-Mormon subreddit, Cardin, in the Discord, the latest thing that I put in there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it completely contradicts what you're claiming, Mr. Craney.
Okay, so here it is right now. If I could put it up on the screen. Biggest mistake of my life was raising my kids in the church. What?
Yeah. So what do you have to say to that? Huh? Biggest mistake. Not mediumist mistake. Biggest. Your response.
So for any individual, I mean, I'm not going to say that it was the worst mistake for them to raise their kids in the church, right? But yeah, sure, there might be some individuals where if they leave, they're happier. But in the aggregate, when you're looking at lots of different people, then it does tend to be in one direction, and that is that religious people do tend to be happier.
Well, and this is, I cite Stephen in the Light and Truth letter. He wrote an article for, I think it was Deseret News or something, but I love what he said here. It said the relationship between happiness and religiosity is so established that many research papers take it as a given starting point. So it's almost, I mean, we're trending on this isn't even up for discussion anymore. This is a well-trod category, path. And a lot of what my Light and Truth letter is combating against these narratives that being a member of the church is really bad for you and your mental health and your happiness and all these different things. It's just categorically false. And you're one of the researchers that I cite in my letter.
There's a long history to that too. I mean, with Freud, even he wrote a book called the Future of a Delusion, talking about religion. So for a really long time, with a lot of the classic psychological thinkers, the assumption was that religion was some kind of a neurosis. And then the inconvenient data kind of started to come in that religious people are actually mentally healthier, right? So, there's some speculation. So, for example, Hispanic people tend to be happier than you would think, given their level of income. And some people think that that's because they're more religious, right? And so, the most miserable countries in the world are countries that are not religious and poor, right? Like Russia. If you have,
Russia,
like Belarus, right?
Belarus, totally.
If you have money, then that helps, right? And if you have religion, that helps. But if you don't have faith and you don't have money, then you're just miserable.
If you have faith, even if you don't have a lot of money, but you have delicious tacos, Still be happy.
Life is pretty good. Now, I do want to say one thing to what Austin is saying here, and maybe in response to a little bit of what Jonah has put up with our N of 3 study.
Of 3.
Yeah.
Not 1, 3.
Statistical significance achieved. Now, I will say this is a fascinating topic, and I think it's a really sensitive one sometimes for people who have left the church and they are feeling like, hey, we're just going to get bashed on by people who are still in the church. I appreciate what Stephen just said, where he's talking about how individual circumstances may vary, right? Because I think what happens is someone might have a difficult experience like the ones shared with Jonah there. And then they maybe catastrophize a little bit and expand that on everybody. It's easy for us to do it too. Like me being in the church, it's easy for me to think, oh, everyone had the same experience I had and everyone's totally happy with the church. And so like, I really like what we're about to get into with Stephen now, where we talk about not just the individual stories that we've interacted with, but like in aggregate with actual statistical significance, what's actually out there. Because I see people like John Dehlin will use a thing I call weasel words. I think that's a term, not just me. I'm not the only one who says that, but he'll say things like, oh, well, yeah, some people are benefited by the church, but many are harmed by it, right? And make it seem as though the vast majority of people interacting with the church are just devastated by it, when in reality, that's not the case. So we're going to be,
and that's what's frustrating to me is when somebody, a critic or a former member, takes their anecdotal personal experience to then prescribe solutions to problems that don't exist.
Yeah.
Funny you should say that. We have an example of this right here.
Yeah, I was going to say, this still exists in the zeitgeist, man. This is a Twitter that just popped up in the Discord. It literally says, for those that are listening on the radio, basically, when I say Christianity destroyed my mental health and I'm 10 times happier now that I left that mentality. Next slide, Christians thinking this is a good opportunity to convert me into Christianity. All right, right there.
Sorry, what's going on in this TikTok? Did you see that? She's like
saying
this?
that it destroyed her mental health, and that just doesn't exist in the aggregate.
Is that the face of someone who's 10x happier? What did her face look like before when she was 10x sadder?
Wait, well, look at this. Look at the camera. Is she moving the camera? What's going on?
She might be, yeah. Yeah, she's moving the camera. See her arm.
Okay, we see.
She's just like trying not to look at it.
That's just the most neutral face. That's the most neutral face to be like, I am 10 times happier. It's really funny.
And she's just like I just hope I never get to the point where I'm taking a camera and I'm just filming myself like, so just serious as a heart attack, filming every angle of my face for this TikTok.
You're just not happy enough.
What the
man.
heck are you doing?
You're just not happy enough.
I am curious, because she's saying Christianity, right? Do we know like what denomination she's talking about? Was this
No, probably.
No? Okay. Because I do wonder, because I could see myself being 10x happier after leaving like Calvinism, right? Where I believe that my actions are predetermined and I have no control over my life, right? Like
savage.
So I actually did a piece on that. I looked at belief in hell anxiety. So I actually authored the hell anxiety scale, and it was interesting. I was actually on a podcast that was it was kind of a progressive Christian podcast, because they were all over it, right? They loved it, because that could be a real issue, right? If you are in one of these faiths where you really literally believe that God will have a blowtorch in your face for all eternity if you get the nature of his relationship with the son wrong or something like that. Like if you actually sincerely believe that your Aunt Sally that was Hindu or whatever is just going to be getting meat ripped off of her with tongs for the
climate
rest of
anxiety. It's like a different type of climate anxiety.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, exactly.
There's this doom.
No, so yeah, that's going to possibly cause anxiety, and we did kind of find some of that, right? That,
fascinating.
Yeah, that if you do have this very literal belief that people are going to be burning in hell for all eternity, and that is a belief that a lot of people had. I mean, we talked to I'm not going to name them because I
Don't
told them it'd
wimp out.
Name
Don't
'em.
wimp out.
Hey, Mom.
It was a religious group I know you've heard of, and I talked to some people that had left that religious group,
Jeff Durbin.
and they were very hellfire and brimstone. And so I asked,
Apologia?
do you as an atheist still have this anxiety? And they say, oh, absolutely, right. Like it's with them forever.
Oh,
It's not,
really?
not all, yeah.
Really?
But for this guy I was talking to, because we interviewed them to get a sense of the questions before we did all the psychometric analysis and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so that's a really so again, I guess to kind of stillman their argument a little bit. Sure, if you are in this house, if you're raised with this idea where, if you don't quite do things right, again, you'll have a blowtorch in the face for all eternity. And then you come to drop that belief, that could be a huge relief. I mean, I remember, I think it was Richard Dawkins got in some trouble because he said that when he was sexually abused, that was less traumatizing for him than than being taught about hell. Right now, some of that might be retrospective bias, but I mean that's a
jeez.
common. The belief in hell is a common enough deal that yeah, I could see that. So anyway, to still man their argument, but in the aggregate, most churches are not emphasizing.
That's kind of the
hellfire.
point of the Light and Truth letter is it's this macro look because we hear these anecdotal stories and we get caught up. We're like, oh man, and I felt that way in the last 10 years. I'm like, man, maybe the church is like really harmful to some groups of people. And you just start to, even though I had a great experience and it seems to me to be like great, like it really helps people, you start to get caught up. And so it's not until you start putting this all together, it's like on the macro, Christians are doing really well. And then if you narrow in on Latter-day Saints, I mean, it's even worse or better as the case would be. And that's the whole point. The biggest section of my letter is called Fruits of the Church. And it just lays out the case that members of the church are doing really well. And so, yeah.
Wow, so this
Well,
is what,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is what Richard Dawkins said. I did not know about this. This is crazy. He says, mild. Oh boy, I can't say this word.
I'll just say it, and if I got to edit out, I'll edit it out.
Mild pedophilia and sexual abuse covers a wide spectrum of sins, but I suspect that research would show that belief in hell to be more traumatic than the trauma you'd get from sexual abuse and mild pedophilia. That was an L. That was an L.
That's a big L.
Yeah,
Dude.
Sir Dawkins. That was dumb.
Or
makes you
there
say
really
that?
are religions that are just doing it so badly that but like that is so foreign to the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's
Join some-
almost just impossible to conceive. What do you want to say,
Say,
Andrew?
I was gonna say you join some churches and you get both.
Oh, dog.
I'm sorry.
Dog, that was savage. All right, so here's my last question for Stephen Craney before we end this one. By what metric do people measure their happiness? I mean, self-reported. There has, like, you can't just have a bunch of people brigading that internet poll to make it look like, hey guys, let's have the First Presbyterian Church of Hartford, Connecticut send 50 members to this internet poll and say Presbyterians are 10 out of 10 happy. So everybody thinks Presbyterians are the best church ever. Like, what? There has to be some kind of rubric and baseline that we go by to measure happiness. How do people measure their happiness?
Yeah, so it's there are these scales that are developed psychometrically, and there's this huge literature on how to do that. And you do try to make sure that the way that you collect data gets around that problem, right? So there was a meta-analysis, for example, of the relationship between health and religion for LGBTQ people. And they looked specifically at they found that there was less of a positive effect if you recruited your stuff from convenient samples of LGBTQ advocacy organizations. Right now, sometimes that's all you can do because it's just such a small group, and so you have to kind of live with that. But we now have enough studies that we can show that if you do recruit from those groups, that has a different effect than if it's a representative sample, right? If you go if you go call 1,000 people and you just pick the ones that identify as gay and religious or whatever, that's going to give you different results than if you go to an advocacy organization. So, yeah.
I gotta
So-
say, I've never seen a group who is more committed to blasting to the world how happy they are than people who have just left the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and had a martini for the first time and are wearing spaghetti strap tops. And I've never seen anybody so obsessed with telling everybody just how happy they are. Just, we're happy, I'm happy, I'm so happy, you can't believe how happy I am, I'm really, really happy, and blasting it all on social media. I've never heard
Now,
somebody-
a word on that that's kind of interesting. When you're talking about the anecdotes of how miserable they were, how happy they are, I do wonder if some of that is due to. So there's a lot of literature lately on just how bad our memories are. So they've actually done some interesting experiments where they've been able to implant memories in people's minds. It's not that hard, right? Like if I go up to you and I say, "Hey, do you remember that time when you were lost in a mall?" and we couldn't find you for a couple hours and they had to call the cops and they finally found you. Most people say, no, I don't remember that. And they say, are you sure? Because this person says it. Do you remember? And then they start dropping little details. A lot of people say, oh, actually, yeah, they start stitching little memories that they have together to try to sort of make it cohere, right?
Oh, interesting.
So that I think that's a lot of what's happening, and it goes both ways, right? So a lot of people are skeptical of kind of faith promoting stories that are recorded 20 years after the fact, because you've had 20 years for that memory to kind of go in a faith promoting to drift in a faith promoting direction if that's how you're predisposed, and so that's all fair.
Kinda scary.
But it does go in the opposite direction. So a lot of these people who say, well, it was absolutely miserable to be raised. And I was like, okay, well, I was in the exact same context as you, and what you're saying didn't really happen all that often.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that salient of a thing. I think a lot of that is their memory, and again, my memory does it too. Everybody's memory does this, but I think a lot of that is confabulation. It's their memories going in the direction that their priors want it to go in, going.
Fascinating.
yeah.
And that reminds me, Stephen, have you heard the joke about gaslighting?
No.
Yes, you have.
Yes, you have.
That's awesome. All right. So I think that's it. Have we successfully defended the thesis that religious people are happier people?
Do we have another clip on this, or is this
That was the one. I've got other
for
clips
this? Okay,
yeah,
other
yeah.
clips for other things.
Oh, other clips for other things? Okay, cool. Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you say you're happier since you left the church? Are you happier since you joined the church? Is this something that can be proven over time? Is it all anecdotal? Do you think that Stephen Craney is full of crap? Just let us know. And Stephen, where can people find you if they want to follow more of your stuff and read more of your articles and get to know more about you, man?
I'm a perma blogger on Times and Seasons. That's usually where I put most of my thoughts.
That sounds like a villain from a modern comic book. I'm a perma-blogger.
Perma-blogger.
That's like some kind of like X-Men climate change demon written into a woke comic book to say like, I perma-blog the atmosphere, and until you pass carbon capture laws, I will forever reign terror on Texas.
That's perma-smogger.
Okay. Yeah, there you're
There's a
right.
little
Okay,
slip, yeah.
cool. So you're a perma-blogger at where, my man? Where can they find you?
timesandseasons.org.
Okay,
It's one of
awesome.
the bloggernacle blogs.
Nice.
Then I occasionally do stuff for other people. If you Google me around, you'll see I have my fingers in a lot of different pies.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, his name is Stephen Craney. He's super cool. You've been in the studio with us, Austin Fife, Andrew Miller, Jonah Barnes, and Brad Whitbeck. And as always, for this and more, please make sure you check us out at wardradio.com.
I just feel so good.